Today we're going to talk about the Preparing for an Apprenticeship Level 2 unit. And we're going to focus on the first learning outcome, knowing the components of the apprenticeship. So what is actually involved in your apprenticeship? Most of you will have 4 components. I've put functional skills and maths. Functional skills, maths and English, just on the same line. You have a separate qualification in maths and then a separate qualification in English. They'll either be at level 1 or level 2. Level 2 is the equivalent of about a GCSE C grade, and level 1 would be in the D to F grades. The top one, the certificate in healthcare support services, would be the main, I suppose we could say, part of your apprenticeship, the main knowledge part of your apprenticeship. And you have also the BTech Award in employment and personal learning skills and health, and we'll explain a bit more about those in a second as well. Let's go down. So the certificate in healthcare support services, that has topics including safeguarding, health and safety, equality and inclusion, communication, handling information, and it has some optional units or topics as well. If we're discussing how it's relevant to your own role, then we want to discuss, if you're working in healthcare, do you need to know about safeguarding? Do you need to be able to recognize the signs and indicators of abuse? Do you need to know how to report concerns if you do have them? So safeguarding will be relevant to pretty much anyone who's working in health care, support services, or any sort of social care as well. Health and safety and well-being as well is very important. You need to be able to know what the purpose of risk assessments are, know a little bit about the legislation that relates to health and safety, and know especially your policies and procedures and agreed ways of working that relate to health and safety and being safe at work for yourself, for your colleagues, and for the service users you're going to be working with. You need to know about equality and inclusion as well in any workplace, but I find it's particularly important in health and social care settings, because sometimes the people we work with are vulnerable, and they might be even more vulnerable to discrimination. So we especially have to understand equality and inclusion. Communication and handling information as well would be very important. Everybody's got a right to privacy, so we need to know how to handle information securely and confidentially, as well as we need to understand about barriers to communication and people's communication needs to be able to communicate effectively. So you could talk a little bit about how these are relevant to you and how these units will be relevant when you're working in your role. The next component is the BTech Award in employment and personal learning skills. This has usually 5 units in it. You have employment rights and employment responsibilities and rights. This unit discusses a little bit about employment legislation, employment rights. It discusses a little bit about representative bodies such as unions and what they do. And it will ask you about issues of public concern that are relevant to the sector. And maybe different viewpoints on this, because it is important to think about any issue of public concern. Let's say there's been a recent closure of an A&E, that services are being consolidated into one big department in the area, then you would need to be able to see all sides of the argument and understand them. This unit will help you with that. Preparing for an apprenticeship, it's the unit you're on at the moment. It will help you to start your learning journey, especially if you've been out of learning for a while. It'll help you to develop your study skills again. It will help you to understand what to expect from the apprenticeship and what's expected of you. And let's say the using inquiry or investigative techniques to solve problems unit. This one is mostly a research project. You need to think of a research question, something either study related or work related that you think could be improved, and investigate it either by maybe carrying out a survey. So you'd have a think about some issue that you think can be improved. It could be related to the efficiency of the service, it could be related to equipment, or it could be morale related. Any issue that you think could be improved, you might carry out a survey and see if other people agree with you that there's a problem, maybe how important they would rate this problem, and if you come up with a few possible solutions to improve things, see how people would feel about taking up these solutions, if they feel they'd work or if they feel they'd make a difference. Participating in teamwork is another unit. This unit is mostly completed by observation. There are a few little questions in there as well, but it's mostly by observation in your actual work setting. And during that, you'll be able to show your team working skills and get some feedback if you need it to improve. It's a good general unit to have to be able to prove that you can work in a team and showcase that going forward in any role that you want to do in the future. Manage own learning is about setting goals, knowing your own strengths in your learning skills and your needs, so what you need to develop, and setting specific goals that you want to achieve. That would be the first half of that unit. The second half is about coming back to those goals that you've set and reviewing them. Have you met the goals? Do you need to put more work into it? Would you change your approach in any way? So we could say all of these are very useful. The research unit, the inquiry or investigation unit, that's going to help you to develop research skills that you'll be able to carry forward to any role. The teamwork unit, you'll be able to carry that forward to any role. And the manage own learning, it's very important for your continuing professional development to be able to set your goals and follow through on them and review them and see if you need more support in some way. The employment responsibilities and rights, it's a very good general unit, so you learn a bit more about your rights, your responsibilities. There's a section in that unit about your progress routes, so it'll help you to think about what your next steps will be as well, and what you might want to do after your level 2 apprenticeship. Okay, so let's look at Madison English. To discuss the relevance of this, you want to think about where you use maths and English every day. Or maybe not even every day, but somewhere in your role. So it might be counting stock levels, doing mileage, doing petty cash for an office. If you're in an ambulance service, it might be whether you have enough equipment in the vehicle for the day. Like I said, petty cash in an office. If you're working in a care home or supported living, and you help people to manage their own finances, then that will be relevant there. You think of any examples where you could do maths in your role. Timekeeping is one. Working out a schedule, that's all related to maths, and most of us will do that at some point during our role. For the English side, In care settings, you might complete daily living records, you might complete medication forms, MAR sheets, you might have reports to complete, or let's say if you're on an ambulance side, an ambulance service, you might need to complete the forms for vehicle checks or forms about safeguarding or any other health and safety concerns. You might also need to send emails or letters to colleagues or other professionals or to your manager. You might need to complete some research or further learning. So it would help you to be able to read quickly and use your English reading skills and comprehension skills in that way. Okay, next question. Describe how each of the components will be assessed. So for that, you need to know how each of the components are assessed. So those top two, workplace practice and knowledge and understanding, we could take those for the certificate in healthcare support services. Workplace practice refers to what you're doing every day when you're at work. So your normal everyday tasks and responsibilities. That is usually observed. So your assessor will come out and observe you at work. They will, if it's appropriate at the time, write down as you're going everything that you're doing and match that up to criteria in the certificates, like in the BTech certificate, in the employment and learning certificate, they're in the teamwork unit. They will match that up to criteria that shows that you have teamwork skills. In the certificate in healthcare support services, let's say the communication unit, there are criteria like demonstrate ability to overcome barriers to communication. So when we see you in your workplace doing things that match up to these criteria, we can write that down and mark off the criteria for you. If we can't see you doing things that match up to these observation criteria while you're at work, because we might not be able to see things, to see everything on the one day or 2 days that we might come out and observe you in practice, then you might be able to do what's called a reflective account, which is where you tell us what happened. Think of a work activity. Think of a time when you were at work. You would write down what happened, say what went well, what didn't go so well, and then what you've learned and what you do differently the next time. So that might be one way to give evidence that you've met this criteria. Another way might be to get a senior colleague or a supervisor who has seen you working to write a witness testimony. That would be a detailed account of a time when you did something like overcoming barriers to communication. Now, the knowledge and understanding is usually completed through workbook. It'll be questions such as describe how each of these components will be assessed, and you can write answers, or you could record answers, or write an essay or do another assignment that would help to show that you have completed this criteria. For functional skills, Maths and English, these are completed by exams. These are externally marked, so your own assessor or tutor won't mark these themselves usually. Maths has one exam. It is 90 minutes long, and it can be completed in paper-based exams or online exams on the laptop or computer. We usually do online exams because you get your results back faster. So there's a benefit there. English has 3 parts to it. You have a reading exam, and a writing exam. These are 60 minutes each. And you have a speaking, listening, and communication exam, which is a half an hour, where you at level 1 complete group discussions, and at level 2 you give a short presentation and do a group discussion. So 20% off the job training. This will be a record of anything you've done that is not part of your, oh, ignore the spelling mistake on that, please. This is a record of anything you've done that's not part of your normal everyday job role, so anything where you've learned something new. This could be formal training where you've been shown something new, like completing Mars sheets, or how to use a stretcher or a hoist for the first time. Or it could be shadowing. So when you're not really working, you're observing, you're standing back and observing somebody more experienced completing their job role, so shadowing. It could be completing research or workbooks. So time spent working on the actual apprenticeship, on the knowledge, that would be part of your 20% off the job training. Oh, there's loads of options. It could be mentoring as well. If you have specific time to meet your a supervisor or senior colleague and ask them questions and get tips and improvements on what you're doing, that could be part of your 20% off the job training. For this, you'd want to keep a record. I recommend writing down the date, the time, how long it took you in minutes to do this, what exactly you did, so what you learned, as in, let's say if it was a formal training, let's say mental capacity training, I'd say I completed mental capacity training. I learned more about the Mental Capacity Act 2005 and how this applies through case studies, and in the future I will be more confident about situations that come up where mental capacity would be an issue. So you want to say what exactly you did, what training or shadowing you did, what you've learned, and how that will impact your job or what you will do with that in the future. Okay. Personal learning and thinking skills. For personal learning, you're going to develop this through completing the personal development unit in the certificate in Healthcare Support Services. The Manage Own Learning unit will help you with this. Both of these units have sections where you where you write down learning goals for the future and come back and review them. So that is about your personal learning. It is the thinking skills. You could put down a number of things for that. I would recommend the research project, the using inquiry project, as an example of how your thinking skills will be assessed, because you have to think critically. The first part of that unit is about planning and carrying out your research. The second part is where you look at your results and think critically, is there anything you could have done better? And the whole project develops your thinking skills and planning skills. Now, employment rights and responsibilities, we have a unit on that in the BTech Award. So that is assessed by workbook, and again, that can be done written, typed, or verbally. Okay, next question. Here we go. Describe the purpose of the apprenticeship agreement. Now, the apprenticeship agreement says what's expected of the learner, the employer, and the training provider. So as a learner, you're expected to attend meetings with your tutor, to attend study days if study days have been arranged for you, to submit your assignments, to participate in the observations, and to let your employer or training provider know if you're struggling, so that we can help you. The employer it's an apprenticeship, so they're expected to give you some time out of your work to complete the meetings or complete some assignments, and to give you some support during this. They're also, the main job of the employer is to give you work experience. Now, the training provider's job is to provide you with training materials, videos like this, to give you guidance and support, and to assess your work and to give you feedback. So the apprenticeship agreement will make sure everyone knows what's expected of them and is there to help us to make sure that you complete your qualifications. And it also, another point, the apprenticeship agreement states the end date of the qualification, so it knows what date everything needs to be completed by, and everyone should know that as well. Okay, thanks very much for listening. I hope this has been helpful for you.